Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taormina.
Welcome to OAA Now. Here I'm Sammy Taormina, blog around the OAA, the host of Last Week Brain Cells and the host between Taormina and Orion Television. I'd like to welcome those watching on the local voice on SoundCloud and those watching on Orion Television. A lot to look at this week here on the podcast. We're going to recap all the football highlights. Soccer districts just came out. Also, we're going to talk about the SEC KLA merger. I know a lot of people around the entire state heard about that being turned down, and what does that have an impact with the OAA? So we'll talk all that this week here on the podcast. So we're going to start off with football. A lot of football talk to talk about this week. Obviously, we're going to talk. We had 2 trophy games this week. We're going to break both those down. Also, we're going to talk about the, what is Lake Orion's struggles. I mean, and obviously, to me, you know what I mean? And I'll talk about that this week here on the pod. We're going to start Kettering and Mott. Obviously, Kettering, 63-0 to Lakeland. They lost that one. I know it's the first game for Coach Cullen Conway as the interim coach, taking over for Brian Barnes. Bottom line is that team's got Kettering, to me, has got really, they're struggling right now. Defense has been bad. Have not been able to score. Lakeland basically gave Kettering a parting gift, putting up 63 on them. I mean, basically, Kettering's in a whole lot of trouble right now. And it starts defensively. This defense has just been bad. I'm not sugarcoating it. It's just bad. It really is. Waterford Mott, bounce back win for them, knocking off Walled Lake Central 44-0. Shutting down Jeff Glynn's highly octane offense over at Walled Lake Central. You got to give Coach Trajan Shea a lot of credit. That defense shut down the offense of Walled Lake Central. I mean, offensively, Sheets had a nice game. Torrey Robinson had a good game. He was balanced. He had a touchdown pass. Caught it. Returned a touchdown. He was very instrumental on both sides of the ball. So you really got to think about, with Waterford Mott. Big one looming for them this week against South Lyon. Waterford Kettering, I feel bad for them. They got to play Walled Lake Western. It's coming off a really, really bad, showing. So a lot to really look at as we head into the final phase. I mean, as we head into, for Kettering, tough one looming. Waterford Mott, big one looming. So we'll see what happens. Now we go to the football side of things in the OAA. We got to talk Lake Orion, Oxford, because to me that game, honestly, and I'll be flat out honest, that game was lost in the youth levels. And the reason why I say this is you look at the youth levels in Oxford, the youth levels in Lake Orion, the youth levels in Clarkston. Now, I include Clarkston in this conversation because you look at the youth levels down in Clarkston. They are very consistent. They have 3 teams. They have a gray team, they have a gold team, and they have a blue team. You look at Oxford, there's a gold team, and there's a blue team. And then you look at Lake Orion, there's a green team, a white team, and a black team. So why do I say this? That Lake Orion Oxford game was lost in the youth levels. It's pretty simple. You got to look at it. You got to look at, that game was one of the definitions of it. Because, when you're in the youth levels, you are learned mental toughness, you are learned tackling, coaching, and, when assignment football, everything like that. Reason why I say that game was lost in the youth levels was because you pretty much got to put it, where is, everybody's running the same stuff. But, you look at with Oxford, they tend to simplify things. They run power, pound the rock, power die trap, Clarkston, they like to run a little bit of that RPO stuff. Lake Orion, we know they a misdirect. I mean, we know it's wing T, jet offense team. So, you kind of think about the mental toughness. This is where that game was lost. You kind of look at the game in itself. You kind of look at it. The defense, Lake Orion's defense was not very good all night. It was not very good. And, they gave up big plays in both the passing game and in the and they gave up big plays in the in the rushing attack. I mean, that's just mental toughness. That really is just mental toughness right there. That's mental psyche. That's mental toughness, mental psyche. And that's learned in the youth levels. That stuff is learned in the youth levels. So you look at Oxford, they've been very consistent with their youth levels. Very consistent. And it showed. It showed in the game. I mean, Jack Hendricks played well. They had big gains from the rushing attack. Now, yes, their defense did have some issues. They struggled, especially in that fourth quarter. I mean, Lake Orion's offense put up 28 in the fourth quarter. That's a start. But that game was clearly youth level. That game, you kind of look at, what's going on with Lake Orion. You look at what's going on with them. You think about what's going on. And I think it's a simple problem that Lake Orion faces. I mean, and I think honestly, you got to have you look at the varsity coaches, there has to be oversight of the youth levels. There has to be. You look at, Oxford, Oxford, some of their coaches, they go and watch their youth levels. You look at Clarkston, you look at, they have some of their coaches that goes look at the youth levels. I mean, Lake Orion, I'm not sure what's going on with the, with that area, when it comes to varsity coaching oversight with the youth levels. I'm not sure what's going on there. But thumbs up. I'll tell you that much right now. Thumbs up. I mean, systematically, does something need to change with Lake Orion? Systematically. Do you move some varsity coaches down to the youth levels? Do you move them down to the middle school levels? I mean, there's a lot of, I think for Lake Orion, it's clear to me they got a program problem. They got a systematic problem with the program. They do. And the reason why, you know what I mean? And that's the reason why I look at that Oxford game and I call it a youth level problem. Because clearly when you look at developing a program, you got to look at, okay, the developmental levels and the youth levels. That's where you build program. That's where you build your program. But also that mental mindset. You got to have a mental mindset to where, you got to have wins and losses. You got to be judged by that. You can't just be accepting of losses. You can't do that. And to me, that's where the problem lies, is people accepting losses. When is that discussed? Tell me when that is, because to me, losing's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. You lose, you learn from it, get ready for the next week. You know what I mean? And if losing starts becoming a habit, that's a problem. So that's why I'm saying that Lake Orion Oxford game was lost in the youth levels. And you clearly look at it. You clearly look at that game and you think about that game. And if people complain to me about it, I'm just going to tell you, look at the results. Look at the results. Because you're in a results-proven league. You're in a results-proven league. Prove to me what results are. Because that's where we're at now. You can say all you want about developmental, but you have to have results to go along with it. That's what I'd say to them right now. That's what I say to anybody. That's what I say to anybody who complains to me about Lake Orion. You gotta have results. You gotta have results. Really. Bottom line. You're in a results-driven league. In and especially in football, that's where it's gotta come out from. Results. You gotta have results. And and right now you look at Clarkston, the reason why where they're at right now, you look at their youth levels. You look at their middle school levels. They're consistent. They are very consistent. And it showed in their win against Adams. Both Bowman brothers been through the Clarkson system. Look what they've been doing. You look at a quarterback like Alex Wachenko. Look what he's grown in the Clarkson youth levels, and look what he's become. So it's that systematic growth, when you grow from youth to middle school to high school, that's where the results are driven. So you look at Oxford's case, you know what I mean? You look at their lower levels, they're competing. You look at the lower levels of Clarkston, they're competing. So I'm saying right now, where's Lake Orion in this conversation? Now you're going to be having to answer questions. If you're Coach Chris Bell, you got to be answering questions, considering where this team's been. You're 0-5 for the first time since 1980. And if this team finishes, 1-8, 0-9, there may be talk maybe having to go down a division. And that is unheard of. That is really unheard of. If Lake Orion had to go down to the white. So when I look at Lake Orion's problem right now, it's a program problem right now. And it's in the youth levels. It's the mental toughness, the mental psyche. And then that lack of mental toughness has been going on in the middle school level, and then it goes higher. So that's the problem that Lake Orion's program has right now, is mental toughness. That's the problem. And and it's affecting the developmental tackling. It's affecting developmental of. There's a lot that's wrong right now, and that's where the problem lies with Lake Orion. It's a systematically problem. And people say if it's a varsity team, it's not. But it's a systematic problem that this program has to get fixed. Has to get fixed. Because if not, then that's going to be the result year in, year out. You got to get that mental toughness thing fixed. You got to get that. And it starts in the youth levels. It really starts there. So you got to get that fixed. That's why you're 0-5 right now. And it's a systematic problem. You got to get that fixed. You have to get that fixed. Because if you don't, that's the result. And if parents complain to me about it, I'm going to tell them, let's look at the results. What do the results stand? What do the results stand? That's my question to you. That would be my biggest question to them. Is, the developmental stages of the program. That's where the problem is. And they got to get that addressed. That's why you look at why Oxford's been consistent. That's why Clarkson's been consistent. It's because they have a consistent chemistry, when it comes to youth levels, the middle school levels, and the high school levels. Everybody's on the same page. That's where Lake Orion has to get to if they want to get this turned around. So that's something to really watch for. Really is. Speaking of Clarkson's win against Adams, obviously, as I mentioned, the Bowman twins, they had a big night, played well. Wachenko had a nice game. Very impressive defense the way they played against Adams. Really impressed. I mean, really impressed with that defense. I mean, I'll tell you. I mean, they shut down Rylan Waters. They shut down the Veer offense. I mean, they did they shut them down. Really bottom line. Then you look at West Bloomfield's game against Groves. That was a tight game. That was a really tight game. You got to give Will Espy a lot of credit. I thought he played well. That defense has been nasty. I mean, they've been really good all year long. I mean, what else is there to say about that defense? And the fact they set up down 7-0. That tells you something. That really tells you something. So, you got to give props to that. You got to give props to West Bloomfield's defense. In the case of Groves, I think they're fine. I'm not too eagerly worried with Groves. I think they're going to be fine. But, that's the challenge. You look at what, that's the challenge for Groves is, we'll see what happens. I mean, they already played Harper Woods. They still got to play Stony Creek. So that's something to really keep an eye on. Rochester, oh boy. Oh boy. How do I describe the Falcons? Ever since that win against Lake Orion, where they had to escape 23-21 in that game, they have not been the same program since. I mean, they gave up 42 to Groves and 34 to Stony Creek. That is 66 points. That is 76 points in 2 weeks. That's bad. That is bad. You kind of think that they left all that energy after that Lake Orion win, and they haven't really carried it over. And to make it worse, that game against Stony Creek was Rochester's homecoming. That makes it much worse. And Stony Creek went in there and just devoured Rochester. They devoured them. 34-0. That's not a good feeling. Your playoff hopes are on the line right now. So we'll see what happens. I mean, we'll see what happens with Rochester. I mean, like right now, when I look at the Falcons, this is a team that's got some issues right now. They got some serious issues they got to address. So you look at Stony Creek's case, they have been a complete machine since that heartbreaking loss to Harper Woods. Stony Creek's in a good spot right now. They're fine. I'm not worried about this team. They still got Adams on the docket, but they could get that fixed real quick. They have that game coming up. So it'll be very interesting to see how that one goes. But Stony Creek's in a really good spot. They really are. Harper Woods had no issue with A&T. A&T right now, I think they're having a really, really rough shot right now. They're having a rough time right now. Is the schedule tough? Is the program strength a big problem? I mean, it's almost eerily similar, but I think Lake Orion, Oxford, Clarkson are different when it comes to how they're built systematically compared to what Southfield is. I mean, you look at Southfield, you kind of look at that youth levels. I know they have the Southfield Warriors down there in the youth levels, but some of them, they go open enrollment schools. It's hard for Coach Keith McKenzie to keep kids within Southfield when you look at other kids that are going to different schools like a West Bloomfield or a North Farmington or an Oak Park or a Farmington. It's difficult. So A&T, their problem is almost similar. But you kind of look at that middle school program, that A&T has. I mean, like, Southfield Schools has. I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know how that middle school program is, but, to me, there's clearly, and yes, they're going through a transition period. Obviously, you look at a couple years ago, A&T was a team that won a state championship, so it's going to take some time for Coach McKenzie's style and program to get down to the lower levels. It's going to take some time. It's his second year at A&T. So it's going to take some time to build that. I mean, what's going on over there at Southfield? You know what I mean? What's going on right now is they're still having a tough time adjusting to a new system. They're still having a really tough time. Harper Woods, we know they're very good. We know they've got the youth levels. We know they got the middle school levels. They got the program strength there. I mean, like, you look at Harper Woods, they're sitting really nice right now. And what Coach O does is, they have varsity coach oversight within the youth levels. They've done a really good job of that. And you look at it, their results right now, you look at the results that they're showing. So really, to me, what's going on here, and when I'm talking about in this week's edition of the pod, obviously, is program structure leading to the records of everybody in the high school levels right now. That's what's going on right now. It's just basically how it's structured. So we'll see what happens there. But Harper Woods right now, really nice spot. Stony Creek's in a really nice spot. Groves is okay at the moment. Rochester, not so much. A&T is just going through a lot right now. So that's what's going on in the white. Red, obviously, Adams is fine. Clarkson and Oxford, I think, are both in good places. West Bloomfield's been in a good spot. Then you look at Lake Orion. I mentioned them earlier. I mean, that's really the biggest concern I have with Lake Orion right now is program structure, especially in the youth levels. And especially mental toughness. That's where the problems with Lake Orion is right now. You look at the blue now. You look at the blue. Farmington right now has full control of the blue. What they did in the second half against Seaholm was incredible. They got Seaholm out of the veer. They drove them out of the veer attack, forcing Patrick Hughes to throw. Of course, when you look at a Jim Dewald system, when you're forced to throw, problems linger. So Farmington, what they did, especially Vincent Pesci, who played really well in that game, basically just took it to Seaholm. They took it defensively to them, and look at the results. And you got to look at Coach Jason Albright in his system. Obviously, you look at, I kind of wish that they would have a freshman program there, but, they kind of done as like combine their freshman JV programs. That's why you look at the bigger numbers there at Farmington. At North Farmington, they have a freshman program, no JV, and a varsity program. So kind of interesting how they've done their programs at the Farmington schools, how they've handled their programs. But you kind of look at the success of that. Is it a successful tool? Honest with you, I would say not. Because if you have three programs, the more the kids play, the more experience, the more reps they get, the better off they're going to be. So, I would say right now in that level at Farmington, I would say before they go to the Lakes Valley Conference next year, to maybe like give your freshmen a chance to build a freshman team. Or if you're like North Farmington, give your JV a chance. I mean, like, really, that's where I think, honestly, having 3 programs is very important. And, and I know right now for Farmington, they're just going through 2 schools, with 2 programs right now. But I just think, honestly, that's where, I would like to see both schools go in that direction. Seaholm's case, obviously, for Farmington, I just think that, right now in the blue right now, Seaholm no longer controls their own destiny. So that's something to really keep an eye on. So Farmington right now is in a really good spot. And they've gotten that loss over Holly, gotten over that loss week 2 against Holly. I know that's a loss that's motivating them right now. And I think I've seen this coming a couple years ago when, you look at Farmington, that JV program they had a really incredible, had a lot of depth on there, a lot of reps on there. Combine them with that varsity team they got, and they got a good problem right now. They're good right now. They're very much in that conversation right now. You look at North Farmington's case; they've really rebounded. 40 to 18. 40 to 22. I think was that score against Troy Athens. So right now, Terrence James being moved around everywhere. Elijah Cobb is really starting to blossom as a quarterback. So you really got to love where North Farmington's at right now. You really got to, just where they're at. So it's really interesting to see how, systematically that program's been. You look at, of course, with North Farmington, the Harrison effect, obviously with Coach John Herstein there. You have John Harrington on staff. A lot of the Harrison staff has been at North, and they've been really, really, they've gotten that program heading in the right direction. So, and obviously what's killing them right now is that only loss to, was that big loss to Farmington. That was big when it comes to their league hopes. So they got to hope Farmington loses a game, going forward. So in the league and not like non-conference. I know Farmington still got to play Clarkston, which that's going to be really interesting. But I just think that Farmington right now is in a good spot. North Farmington in a really good spot as well. Seaholm, they're okay at the moment. I just think, with them, they got to handle that veer. They got to, if they're trailing, and it's simple. Seaholm's got the same problem as Adams does. And that's when if you trail like a certain amount of points, Adams is kind of like that 28 points. Seaholm, I probably much would say like it's 21. Because if it's 21 point deficit for Seaholm, they're in trouble. If it's 28 for Adams, then I think, and the reason why I say it's higher for Adams is because obviously they got the athletes. Anytime you have a quarterback like Rylan Waters, you have a quarterback like, you have Nolan Ferris, you have Brady Lindstrom, who I think is gonna be an emerging star for Adams. You guys, you put Adams at a little bit more higher, point of reference when it comes to trailing and deficits. So, when it comes to teams that run that veer offense, and you kind of put like Adams more higher than Seaholm, and I think it's a talent perspective. So we'll see how that goes. But Seaholm, they're in an okay spot. They just can't afford to get down 21 points, or trouble starts looming. So that's really where I have when it comes to when talking about Seaholm. Oak Park 33-7 against Troy. I think when you look at Troy, I think Troy's in trouble. Defensively, they have not looked very good. Last 2 games, they have not. Last 2 games, I think they allowed 74 points in the last 2 games. That's not winning football at all. Now, obviously, for Coach Callahan, the defensive coordinator, they've ran to Clarkson, Oak Park. Both teams are very good, very athletic. And I think that's been the story for Oak Park's issues is the, you really look at the scenario, how that is. So we'll see how it is. You really think about with Oak Park, I think it's going to be a key where, if Oak Park, they had those 2 tough losses, Oak Park, the Farmington and Seaholm. they'd be in that competition right now, but they're not. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Knights going forward. But it's something to really, really keep an eye on with Oak Park. So that's something to really, the athleticism, the defense. Can they maintain the program strength level? That's the question for Coach Greg Carter. So that's going to be something to really, really keep an eye on as we go forward. Troy Athens, obviously the defense has been bad. As I mentioned, in that loss to Northampton, it's the defense has been the biggest problem for Troy Athens. Offensively, they're fine. It's just the defensive side of the football. That's where their biggest problem is. And then Bloomfield Hills took on Pontiac. It was a Bloomfield Hills homecoming. Bloomfield Hills had no issue with Pontiac, 38-0 with that score. You kind of gotta give Coach Scott Merchant credit. I mean, obviously Pontiac is trying to build their program, obviously, and we know it's going to take some time for them to develop that program. It's going to take some time to really focus and build on that program, that mindset. If they can do that, I think they're going to be fine. Bloomfield Hills, obviously, Coach Scott Merchant's trying to change the culture there. Obviously, you got to look at the youth levels for sure to change the culture there. And then obviously the middle school level. Of course, Bloomfield Hills has got two middle schools at North and South. Obviously, of course, North, formerly the Bloomfield Hills lost their campus. They got beautiful fields in the back of the school there. But you got to give props to what Coach Scott Merchant's doing. I know it's the first year. He's trying to change the culture there. It's not easy to do over there, considering, Bloomfield Hills has had a lot of losing in the past. And obviously, you start building them at the lower levels, and then they go up in the middle school ranks, and they get up to the high school ranks. And, it's trying to build that same results over there at Bloomfield Hills. So that's something to really keep an eye on as we go forward when it comes to results. So, you're in a results-driven league, and, this is a results-driven, everything's driven by results, and not only is in the high school ranks, but in the middle school ranks, and also in the youth levels. And I think that's where it has to be. Is you got to produce results. And that's really what it is. I don't care if you're if you're a coach or a parent, you're in a results-driven league. You know what I mean? When you commit yourself to coaching your son or coaching your daughter, you gotta bring results, and that's really what it is. I mean, that's really what it is, and that's just honesty there. Avondale, Ferndale, 33-0 Ferndale over Avondale. Rough year first year for Coach Jim Carlisle. Just rough. I mean, defensively, they've been just basically a disaster. I mean, it's not been pretty. It really hasn't. I mean, the results show themselves. And that's really where the case of, that's just, and I think, the kids have not adjusted well. Obviously, from the wing tee to the spread, and then the defensive scheme, you gotta just, it's bad. It's bad. So if you're Coach Carlisle, you got to look at the youth levels. You got to look at the middle school levels, and you got to say to yourself, what's going on here? It's going to take time for them to build those programs up. And I think that's really where, that's really what I'm saying. It takes time, and, but you're in a results-driven league, so, that's really where the issues are. So, Ferndale, they've gotten things taken care of real quick. The Eagles are starting to click. You got to like what Coach Alma Jackson's done with Ferndale. Turn things around to that 0-2 start. They got a tough coming up in the next 3 weeks. They got Wayne County Powers coming up. So, we'll see how it goes. And then we got to recap the battle of Woodward Berkeley Royal Oak, that was 38-10 in favor of Berkeley. Berkeley, they've got things figured out a little bit. Ever since that loss to Ferndale, they've gotten some things figured out. You got to look at with them, just consistency. That's really where the Bears are right now. If you're Coach Casey Humes, you got the street sign back in Catalpa. You just gotta let's keep building that program. You just gotta keep building. That's really where Berkeley has been really consistent. Royal Oak's case, you gotta look at Royal Oak's case, and then you gotta start questioning. You gotta start questioning what's going on there. I mean, you gotta question program strength. You gotta start questioning what are you doing in the youth levels, what are you doing in the middle school levels, what are you doing in the high school levels, what are you doing? You gotta start questioning that now. And I've said this before. I mean, like every school system, their system is different. But what's it going to take for Coach Colin Campbell and the Ravens to take that next step? What's it going to take? I mean, you kind of look at where they're at right now. I think they're 2-3 right now. You got to look at what direction Royal Oak wants to go. You got to attack the process. I get that. But here's the thing. If you struggle to attack the process, you're not going to win games. You're not going to win games. I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, you're in a results-driven league. You're judged by wins and losses, not by development and success, not by development. You're proven by success, and you're in a results-driven league. That's where I've been trying to say about a lot of these programs. Yes, you're developing kids, you're developing kids, but when you're in a results-driven league, that development has to be sped up a little bit. Has to be, and you got to have the mental mindset to do it. That's where everything goes. That's why you see teams like Clarkson, who's consistent every year. You look at Harper Woods, why they're consistent every year. I mean, Oxford's getting there. That's why you see all these teams being consistent. Because they have the program down in the youth levels and the middle school levels. That's where programs are built for success. Is down there in those levels. You're developing tackling. You're teaching the mental psyche, the mental mindset. Everything's taught down there. And then when they get up to about the high school levels, you almost got a finished product. When you're up on varsity, you have a finished product. That's what I'm trying to get to when it comes to program strengths. So that's where everybody is right now. And the results are driven by that. We'll see what happens. It's my take on football. Now I'm going to talk about conference realignment. I know a lot of people have asked me about this. They've asked me about what is my thoughts about conference realignment. I mean, obviously the OAA is going to get some changes starting this winter with Waterford Kettering and Waterford Mock coming into the league. Both teams are coming into the coming in the OA, whereas Farmington and North Farmington are leaving the OA to go to the Lakes Valley Conference. And they're joining alongside with Livonia Stevenson, Livonia Churchill, Livonia Franklin, are also coming into that conference. The news around here was, of course, the Southeastern Conference. Of course, that is the league where Saline is, where Chelsea's with. Also, Monroe's in that conference. And the KLA possibly merging. So the leagues were originally approved. They were originally approved, but the SEC had a vote. And for them to vote, they needed a 2/3 majority for it to be approved. And it did not get approved. So it was 8-6 was the vote total. And you need 2/3 majority to get into the to have it approved. And a lot of it I heard was enrollment and also travel. travel's been the biggest theme here when it comes to conference realignment. And I think it's going to continue to be that way because you look at the scenarios, I get where some teams, look at enrollment and they say, and they look at, travel times and they look at a course, going for a 4:00 game or for a 4:00 basketball game or a 4:00 soccer game. I mean, I get it. Travel has been an issue. And when you look at this economy right now, you kind of look at prices going up. I mean, and it's a problem. I totally get it. And you look at, of course, excuse me. You look at the merger, the failed merger of the KLA and the SEC. What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And obviously, you look at what the OAA conference realignment's already impacting the league. Obviously, I mentioned with the Waterfords and also the Farmingtons. So it's going to be interesting to see what direction the league goes. I mean, what direction the league goes. Can they stay put? I mean, do they want to expand? I mean, if they do want to expand, I mean, there are several options out there. When you look at teams that, could fit the strength of the conference. I mean, you look at, of course, obviously enrollment. Obviously, you look at Lake Orion, Clarkston, Oxford, Troy, Athens. A couple of the biggest enrollments in Oakland County. And also in the state. The smallest school is Ferndale University. I mean, Harper Woods is a pretty small school based on enrollment. So I'll be curious to see what direction the league goes. I think it would be very interesting, but it'll be something to keep an eye on in the next couple years. What direction the league goes, and I think that's going to be something to really, really watch for. Because, I've heard a lot of rumors on one side. I've heard a lot of rumors on the other side. I mean, you look at the OA right now, this winter they're going to be at 25, and then next fall they're going to be at 23. And we don't know the direction of the Waterford schools because, I've heard a lot of rumors surrounding the Waterford schools. So that's something to keep an eye on with conference realignment, and that's something to keep an eye on as we head into the years ahead with this conference. I think when you look at the OAA right now as a conference, this is as strong of a conference in the state of Michigan that I've seen maybe in the last 10 years. This is one of the most strongest conferences in the entire state of Michigan in the last 10 years. You look at, of course, the Macomb Area Conference. We know they've gotten stronger. We look at, obviously, Ottawa-Kent. They're one of the strongest conferences in the state. Now, obviously, with them, they got almost half of the west side of the state in that conference. But that's something to keep an eye on. So, as we get into the year. So, we'll see what happens. As we get into we keep an eye on conference realignment. So, that's something to really, really keep an eye on there. And now let's look at soccer. I mean, I know a lot of this podcast, I talked a lot about football. And football does get its own, and rightfully so when it comes to football. Basketball, obviously, we talk about. But I haven't talked about soccer. So when I look at soccer, usually on the soccer side of things, I leave that to the History Now co-host, which is History Now host Anthony Taormina, which is has his own show. So he brings, he's like the soccer insider for me. He's like my soccer insider. So the districts came out for soccer. The matchups came out, and there's some interesting matchups here. So I'm gonna start from Division 2. We're going to start with District 30. This will be at Dearborn Divine Child. Warren Fitzgerald takes on Lampier. That winner takes on Hamtramck. Redford Thurston plays Garden City, and Oak Park plays Dearborn Divine Child. Now, Oak Park is in this district, but Oak Park has really struggled this year. It's going to be a tough match for Oak Park because, one, they're the 7th seed, and it's a difficult matchup. Oak Park's had a long year in the blue division in soccer. So, it should be an interesting matchup. It's a tough one for Oak Park, taking on the host school. It wouldn't surprise me if it's 8-0. It wouldn't surprise me. Really wouldn't. So Oak Park's gonna have it really, really tough in their first round matchup against Dearborn Divine Child in their district. Then the other district in Division 2. Now people are gonna say, well, you look at the enrollment of each team here, obviously. Why is Ferndale in Division 1? As I mentioned, obviously, with them, it's their enrollment with them. It's their co-op with Ferndale University. So that's why Ferndale is in D1 for soccer and not in D2. It's similar to football, where Ferndale's in Division 2 for football and not in D4. So, so it's very similar. So Ferndale, they're in Class A for soccer. They're in Division 1 for soccer. And then when they get in the winter months, Ferndale youth split up, they're in D2. So, and then when they co-op and they merge, you see why Ferndale's in D1, because they combine the enrollment. So that's really why you ask why Ferndale is not in D2 for soccer, and it's because of their co-op with Ferndale University, and that's the reason why. So here's District 28. This will be at Wall Lake Western. We got Waterford Mott taking on Pontiac. That could be a start of a really good soccer rivalry. That could be a really, really good soccer rivalry in the future. That winner is going to have a really tough matchup with Bloomfield Hills Cranbrook Kingswood. That is going to be a really difficult matchup, to say the least. And then you have Avondale, Orchard Lake, St. Mary's. It's a rematch of last year's district first round match. Of course, Avondale lost that one to Orchard Lake St. Mary's. Orchard Lake St. Mary's won that district as a 3 seed last season. So that'll be a really interesting matchup, to say the least, there in that one. Then you have Waterford Kettering taking on Wall Lake Western. Kettering this year, they've been a soccer power, but this year they've kind of had a surprise drop-off. They've had a surprise turn-off. So that's a little bit of a surprise for me when I look at Waterford Kettering, is that they've struggled this year, but they've got they were competitive. They have wins against Avondale, and they tied Ferndale. So Kettering is not your average 7 seed. Wall Lake Western, they're one of the top teams in the Lakes Valley Conference. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that one goes. But, it wouldn't surprise me if Waterford Kettering upsets Wall Lake Western, even though this year they played in the same conference, in the Lakes Valley Conference. It would not surprise me if Wall Lake Western gets upset. It really would not surprise me. I mean, like I said, Waterford Kettering Pontiac could be a future rivalry as well. So that could be something to really watch for in boys soccer. There's a lot of future rivalries that are, could be developed between Waterford Kettering, Waterford Mott, and Pontiac. I mean, like in Avondale, obviously, it's more than likely, it wouldn't surprise me that both Kettering and Mott could be in the blue division next year, or in the gold division if the league decides to go 4 divisions. But I think it makes a lot of sense to see that future rivalry start to grow between Waterford Kettering or Waterford Mott against Pontiac. That would be a really good rivalry in the future. Even Avondale would be a good rivalry. I mean, that would be a fun one to keep an eye on as both Kettering and Mott go into the OAA heading into next season. So that's something to really, really watch for going forward. Now we go to District 15. This is Division 1 now, over at Rochester. We got Adams versus Stony Creek. That winner's taking on Utica Eisenhower. Then you have Utica versus Rochester, and then Utica Henry Ford 2 versus Romeo. So when I look at this matchup and I think about, Adams, Stony Creek, Adams has had a really down year this year. Adams lost a lot of talent after winning the D2 state championship from last year. Stony Creek's been improved. They're up in the upper echelon of the white division right now, competing with Royal Oak and Bloomfield Hills for the white division. But when you look at, that first round matchup, that's going to be really interesting because Adams still has experiencing being on that state championship team, especially those who were called up for the playoffs. They have that experience, and that helps them in this situation. You look at Utica Eisenhower, they've been really good all year long. They've been very consistent. They've been very competitive. So, if it's Adams, I think they could give Utica Eisenhower problems. But if it's Stony Creek, I think Utica Eisenhower out of that whole group could get out of there and get in the district final. So, it'll be interesting to see in that one. Rochester's been up and down all year long in the white. They've been up and down. I mean, they have had, they're one of the best coached teams in the state, but, they've been up and down. They've had a lot of ties this year. A lot of ties. So, they've been a hard team to figure out. They've been a hard team to figure out. So, Utica, we know they're a dangerous team. They could pose some problems. Romeo and Henry Ford 2. Could that be a trap game? Absolutely, that could be a trap game. So you're looking at possible Rochester-Romeo clash. That could be a good game. I think that could be a really good game. It wouldn't surprise me if Rochester beat Romeo. It really wouldn't surprise me. So I think Rochester's got a great opportunity here. I think they can get back to the district final. I think they can. They got by Romeo. They got by Utica. They got a good situation here. See how that goes. District 14 at Troy Athens. We have Sterling Heights and Warren Mott. That winner's taking on Troy Athens. Frazier, Warren Cousineau, Roseville, Sterling Heights, Stevenson. Troy Athens should be favored to get out of there. I mean, played a tough schedule. Only team that could concern Troy Athens is Sterling Heights, Stevenson. I think that could be a big time concern. I mean, if things go right, but if Athens, they should win that district handily. They should win it pretty convincingly, being at home. Not a strong district, but we'll see what happens. District 13 at Seaholm, we got A&T taking on Troy, Royal Oak, and Berkeley, Grove, Seaholm, and Birmingham Brother Rice versus Bloomfield Hills. This could be a good one. I mean, Troy should get by A&T pretty handily. Royal Oak and Berkeley should be a really tense game. I think we know how that rivalry is. We know how tense that both games are going to be. That should be a heck of a game between Royal Oak and Berkeley. That could go down to the penalties, I think, in that one. Groves and Seaholm, that's another rivalry game. Seaholm, we know, has been very good all year long. Groves has been solid. So that could be a fun one, too, between both those rivalry games. Anything can happen in rivalry games. Anything can happen. Then you have Birmingham Brother Rice and Bloomfield Hills. Bloomfield Hills should get by that one. I could see a Seaholm Bloomfield Hills second round matchup could be fun. Berkeley Troy or Royal Oak Troy could be fun. Obviously, I know the brother's going with Seaholm, but I'm going to take the latter. I'm going to take Berkeley in this one. I think Berkeley could surprise some people here. Last year, they were the number one team in their district, ended up falling. I think Berkeley could be a team that could get some revenge. They could be a team to really, really watch for. So it'll be really interesting to see how that one goes. District 12 at Grosse Pointe South, we got UD Jesuit taking on Detroit Renaissance. Detroit Cass Tech takes on Dearborn Fortson. Grosse Pointe South takes on Dearborn. Ferndale takes on Detroit Western. Obviously, when you look at this one here, Detroit Western, Obviously, the OAA is a much tougher conference than Detroit Public School League. But Detroit Western's had a really nice year. I mean, Detroit Western tied Troy Athens at 4 once. I mean, so Detroit Western can compete. They can compete. But I just don't know if I see them knocking off UD Jesuit. Obviously, the Cubs, we know how good they are. Playing the always tough Catholic League. So that's going to be really tough for them. Ferndale, Detroit Western, that should be a good game. But I just think Detroit Western will be, they'll have just enough. And I think that'll be something to really keep an eye on going forward there. Then we have District 8 at Novi, Detroit Catholic Central. We have Farmington taking on South Lyon. That winner's taking on Livonia Stevenson. Novi, Northville, we know that rivalry. Then South Lyon East versus Novi, Detroit Catholic Central. Livonia Stevenson, I've been really impressed with the way they've been playing. Really impressed. Farmington getting the 5 seed. They've been competitive, but, I think it'll be tough for them. Because whoever wins that game with Farmington, South Lyon, future Lakes Valley Conference rivals, is going to have to play against Livonia Stevenson. So that'll be really tough. Novi, Northville, we know that rivalry. I think it'll be a good game between those two teams. It always has been between the 8 Mile rivals. Of course, Novi to the north, Northville to the south of 8 Mile. So that should be a really good game between both those two teams. And then South Lyon East taking on over Detroit Catholic Central. Shamrock should be the favorite, obviously, to get out of this district. They've been the playoff power, but you got Northville there. They are a wild card. So we'll see how that one goes. District 7, this one's at Heartland. We got Milford taking on Walled Lake Central. That one is taking on Heartland. West Blooming takes on Walled Lake Northern, and North Front takes on Lakeland. Heartland should be the favorite in this district for a couple reasons. You look at Heartland, they got home court. Now, they did change turf. They did change from turf to grass. I'm sorry, they changed from grass to turf. So, so that'll be interesting to see how that one goes. Milford Walled Lake Central should be an interesting game. West Bloomfield Walled Lake Northern, that should be a fun matchup. West Bloomfield Walled Lake Northern played earlier in the year. West Bloomfield fell to Walled Lake Northern. But you look at Lakeland North Farmington, obviously, that should be an interesting game. Obviously, OA is a much tougher conference than Lakes Valley in soccer. But that is a potential upset in the making there. But at the end of the day, I just don't see how anybody's touching Heartland in this one. I just think that the Eagles will be too much, and I think it'll be something to really watch as we, obviously, as, could somebody challenge Heartland? It could be Lakeland if they don't get upset by any of the OA schools. It could be Walled Lake Northern, same situation if they don't get upset. So we'll see how that one goes. And then our last district here will be at District 6 at Lapeer. We got Flint, Carmen, Hayward taking on Clarkston, Flushing, Grand Blanc, Lapeer, Oxford, and Davison Lake Orion. Clarkson has to be the favorite here, what they've done all year long. A lot of experience, senior experience, and you have that, you tend to have a really deep playoff run. Oxford last year had a lot of senior experience and got to the Final Four. So, and Oxford has given Clarkson their only loss. And it was a 2-1 game at Oxford. So, it'll be interesting to see. But Oxford's on the other side of the bracket. Clarkson's beaten Grand Blanc pretty handily. So, it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. But Clarkson should have it okay heading into district final. Lake Orion has been red hot lately. They've been red hot. Had wins against Grand Blanc, had wins against Oxford, Rochester. They're red hot right now. So it should be really interesting to see how that one goes. So I think it'll be a good game, though. If Lake Orion Oxford plays in the semis, that could be a really interesting game. That could be a good clash between the two rivals. Excuse me. So we'll see what happens going forward. But as I mentioned, Clarkson's got to be the favorite to come out of that district. I think it'll be a good game between Lake Orion and Oxford if they get there. So we'll see what happens. All right, man, signing off here. Make sure you follow the blog at blogspot.com. Excuse me. And also around the OA at weebly.com for information on the OA. Take care, God bless, and I'll see you on next video. Take care and God bless. See you on next video. God bless.